Hey everybody, thanks again for joining us here at D20 Village for our second video. Today we're going to be talking about story progression in your Dungeons & Dragons game and what I've learned in the past year of mine. So, get ready. This is going to be a good episode. All right, first and foremost, I want to apologize. We're outside today. It's a little bit windy. This is the only day that I was going to be able to record, and I wanted to get a video out to you guys this week. So these are the conditions. Again, I apologize. All right, so let's start. Let's talk about story progression. You may think that you're going to have this awesome story planned out, and your players are going to go just through everything that you planned out, and it's going to be an awesome time. Well, you're wrong. In my experience, I had like 4 different stories I planned out, 4 different plot lines I planned my players that they were going to go through, like one of these 4, and I had a 5th one just in case like things went south. Well, my players, after an entire year, because we've been playing for a year about now, they're finally getting into one of the stories that I planned out. And then they're also going in a direction that incorporates another one, my second story. So it's kind of, the ending is going to be a little bit of a hybrid between the two. It should be a pretty awesome outcome, but we're going to see how this goes. Now, there are 2 main key things you have to understand as a dungeon master. You may be like a control freak, but you can't control your players, right? Because the story is a fluid body. The story that you planned out is a fluid body from the beginning to the end, because you can't control the emotions of the players. You can try to influence them. You can't control who they're going to kill. You can try to stop them from killing some people, or trying to get them to like kill or win over the side of other players or people, NPCs in the game, but you're not going to be able to completely control these things. A good DM isn't going to be able to. A bad DM might just say, no, this is what you're going to do, and then the game doesn't really become fun. So for being a good DM, you have to understand that the story is a fluid moving body. There's an unspoken agreement between the dungeon master and the players saying, hey, me as a DM, I'm going to plan out the story. You players, you're going to play your character pretty much how you think that they're going to react to the story, and you're going to live this out. Now, the good thing is, the players, if you're good, right, if you're doing your studying, if you're doing your reading, if you're doing your planning, the players, to a good DM, they're not gonna be able to notice when something's kind of just flying out there, or if you can come up and you can recall names on the spot. They're not gonna be able to pick out like, oh, like this isn't where we're supposed to go. They're gonna think like, oh, like this guy, this DM, this person has had all this planned out this entire time, and as a DM you just say yes I have, when really you're just like, no, I don't know what I'm doing. That's the reality of the situation. To give you an example, my players, who started off as what we called them, the pit slaves. I like giving titles to my games, because then it allows me to keep track of pretty much like compartmentalize.
Yeah, no, I don't know what that word, I don't know how to say that word. You know what I'm saying.
It allows me to keep every game in like different compartments. I could think of, okay, the events in this game happened because of these people. These people have this name. So their previous name was the Pit Slaves. Now they're being known as the Lords of Underorange. Now, in their very first game, they were a part of the military. They were doing some like scouting missions, like observing and reporting. This didn't go very well. Their very first mission that they got as a team was to observe and report a windmill. Just pretty much check it out, survey the area, come back, and we're all good. Well, that didn't really happen. They end up getting into a fight with the wizard and a couple hired hands. They find this awesome stone, and they think it's a good idea. They burn the windmill down, which I don't know why. Players do unpredictable things. The story's a fluid body. So the players go from burning down windmills to just escorting a really high powerful wizard, then killing that wizard, killing one of their own comrades, pretty much speaking face to face with like the devil essentially, Asmodeus, who in my game he's like the son of Asmodeus. So they're like talking to this guy, and then they're like, oh, like what do we do? Do we fight him? Like he's evil? No, he's gonna kill us, right? And then one of the players is like, yo, I have this bow that's freaking super powerful. My bad, I actually like made that bow way too strong. And so what I did was I made that bow belong to this demon lord, prince, god, whatever the heck he is. And he's pretty much comes back and he's like, hey, you know what? Like, I'm going to need that back. And the player made a good decision and he's like, yeah, here you go. You can have this. Now, that player is still bitter to this day, Bellamy. But in the long run, he didn't die. If he would have fought that guy, he probably would have, and it was a good decision. Now, there is an opportunity for him to get it back, but I'm just rambling at this point. I'm not even talking why they're the Lords of Underorange. Oh, no, this is important. All this is happening in an old, like, dwarven ruin, right? And they decide, they're like, well, they get exiled from the city that they were previously in, the city that they were working for. And so they decide, like, hey, you know, we're just going to live here in this ruin, right? Which I've never had, like, I've never thought of, like, why players kind of just don't move into, like, old fortresses. I guess it does happen in stories, but, I mean, I've never played a character that did that. Like, that was a pretty good idea. So they moved in there, and they just started doing trade with people, you know? They started having, like, they started delegating people to go to the city that weren't, you know, exiled and started doing trade. And now it's like a prospering city, and they call themselves the Lords of Underorange because they named the city Underorange. Also, on a complete different side note, it's kind of funny that they're in this city and they named it that name because this city was the main focus point of the very first Dungeons & Dragons game that I DM'd. Like, stuff went down in this city and it affected the whole world, right? Who these players in this game only know of, like, legends of the players that, like, handled that issue. And then Underorange was the name of a city from, like, a book that I was writing in high school, and I just kind of, like, tossed it aside, and I just take, like, interesting ideas and characters from that book, but I never actually went with it. And then the Underorange, like, one of the players suggested, like, he knew about the book that I was writing, and he's like, yo, this is what we should call that. It's just a super proud DM moment for me. Has no relevance to the story almost. But at me sitting back behind the scenes, I'm just like, yes, these are the RP tabletop moments that I live for. This is awesome. I love it. Anyways, back to the characters. So these characters, instead of going the way that I designed for them to go, one of the 4 ways, actually almost 5, they decided, hey, we're going to build a city. So that was fun to RP. But I did learn a couple different, like, tips and tricks from doing that. In your game, make, like, a calendar, right? Like, give names to the months, you know, write out kind of how everything flows, because 1, it'll make it more realistic, and 2, it's an easy way to go back and say, oh, like, this happened this day. Like, for us, you know, we go and we think, okay, what happened, like, last Tuesday? Well, we can give an account of what happened because we can remember back last Tuesday. That's how we remember. And so the days of the week and the months and the year and the time and the seasons and all that is really important. And I never really thought about issuing that in my D&D game until I watched that video. And now that I did that, it allowed me to do something which was phenomenal. Changed the pace of my game completely. Before I issued a calendar, I was literally going by, like, day by day, because the players, like, we would stop, like, halfway through something, and I'm like, okay, wait, this is important. So the next time we'd just pick up, like, where we left off. But I didn't like that, because then, like, half of the game literally took place in a span of, like, 3 weeks, maybe. I don't know, it was ridiculous. So then I issued the calendar. And then what I did was kind of what Matthew Mercer did. He sped up the game like a year. I'm pretty sure he did that. I from watching Critical Role. I don't know. Anyway, that's what I did. I sped up the game a couple months, like 3 or 4 months. It allowed the players to discover other stuff. It allowed the players to pretty much, like, learn other skills, to develop the city. And so by the end of these 4 months, like, the players are like, they have some people living in their city because they have, like, this really cool guy. They better watch out. He might take over the city. Spoiler alert, just kidding. So we skipped 4 months ahead, right? And I was like, okay, this is the perfect opportune moment because now stuff is going down. And the players can recall back to on the last games that they played, and they can realize like, oh, we've been doing our own thing, but the world is progressing, right? I like to express it to the players. The world is progressing whether you're playing in it or not. So that was pretty much like my key in, because in the last game, Asmodai, who goes and he like gets this bow, he's like, yeah, cool, I got my bow back. He's like talking to Karnak, which is like one of like this really big wizards, he's like really powerful. He's talking to him, he's like, yo, you need to come with me. Like the pact was broken, right? So Karnak steps through this portal. The players are like, wait, the portal's open. Should we go in? That would be kind of cool. Wait a second, he's like a demon. We don't really want to go there. No, and the portal closes. All right, time's up. Boom. I gave the players the opportunity. They didn't go. That's fine, right? Well, then they come to realize, they're like, wait a second. Karnak is the leader of like this like continent essentially. He's not the continent, but this region that they're in, right? He's like the leader of that. And he's gone. So like what's going to happen now? So they take a trip to the city and they realize that like stuff isn't being run the way that it shouldn't be, and just a lot of like stuff is going on because like I said, the world is progressing whether you're playing in it or not. That's how I like to play my game. And so that brings me to when the players were in their city, right? They're just, kicking back, having a party. Some players are studying because they're like wizards, and these guys are drinking because that's what they do, right? There's like this big shake of the mountain, right? And the players like, oh my gosh, what's going on? We're gonna die. Just kidding. They run outside and there's this giant like freaking demon thing that's like stuck in the middle of the city, right? And he's like around this inverted circle. And so the players like, oh, we should probably do something. And the demon thing is just like yelling in like this language that the players don't really understand. And then he calls out a couple names. He calls out Adonis, Bellamy, Samson, and Whisk and Gaelic, right? These are like the players. Their players' names. So they're like, ooh, like that kind of sucks. They called out our names. So they kind of go over, and he has this parchment in his hand. The players take it, right? This crazy demon thing isn't fighting them. He can't really move. He's inside this inverted circle. The players read it. It's a letter from Karnak, pretty much saying that he is stuck, right? In can't remember what it was called, but it's like the 9th layer of like hell or something in D&D lore. I don't know what the heck it's called. So he's stuck there. All these demons around, he's like fighting, he's trying to get his way out, but he can't because he needs the players to pretty much traverse through the multiverse, collect these specific items, and bring them back to this one spot on this table and lay them down. Therefore, everything's going to kind of like be reset in the sense where like the treaty will be brought back together or something like that, and Karnak can come back. So the players are like, well, crap, let's do that. So the players go and they find these tribal men who pretty much worship Karnak. They think he's like the god of fire. And they go with them and they go like through this fire, right? Like into the flame, and they emerge out, and there's like this really like not a big city, but like a pretty big gathering of these tribal men. And the players automatically notice, holy crap, it's hot here. And they look around and there's like fire everywhere, and there's soot in the air, and there's like these dragons way out in the distance, and there's like these dotted landscapes of just destroyed ruins and all that. And the players know, crap, we're not on Alu anymore. Alu is the name of the planet. They're like, we're not there anymore. Like, this sucks. And this was the first step that the players took to doing the first campaign that I had set up for them this entire time. This took a year later, and the players took one step in that direction. Yeah. This brings me to my second point. Patience as a DM is absolutely vital for your game. It's so necessary. You need to have patience with your players. You need to have patience with your story. I know you have this awesome story you have planned out. The players might get to it. That sucks to hear. They might get to it. If you're patient, the players will get to it, right? The players will finally get to some sort of story that you planned out. The reason why I'm saying this is because after the players did that, they're going through the elemental plane of fire. They realize they can't get back, so they might as well go forward. They got to go through it. Then they go to the outlands, and then they're like meeting up with these specific people. They meet up with this guy, wizard Timothy, that's kind of his real name. We'll see in the future game to play. Anyway, he's a time wizard, and they go back in time. Now, this was the first step in the second campaign, in the second plan that I had for these players. So now they took like one steps in one direction and one steps in another direction, and now I'm like, well, here we go. Now we're going to do a hybrid of both these games. We're going to see how it ends up, which should actually be pretty cool. You know, I imagine that if they were going to go one direction, it would be cool, but going both at the same time might either be chaos or it might end up being pretty tight. We'll see. So another thing, right? This is where I get the enjoyment of being a DM. The players are actually going back in time to a previous D&D game that I ran with different players, and they're going back to fix their mistakes, which is pretty cool if you ask me, because that campaign took place like days. Like, I mean, like, that campaign finished days before these players, the Pit Slaves, the Lords of Under Orange, started their campaign, which I think was pretty cool. The previous campaign was the Wizard College. This campaign is the Lords of Under Orange. And for me as a Dungeon Master, that gives me the most satisfaction, absolutely. So yeah, guys, kind of just to reiterate what I was saying, the main focus of this is, remember that your story is a fluid moving body between you and the players, and that patience is going to be your biggest asset as a DM, and as for the players kind of looking towards you as the DM. That's it for today's video. I mean, that's the end of my screen. That's all I have written down. So that must be the end of the video. I want to do a campaign diary, so you guys can look out for that. I'm going to explain to you more in depth how the Lords of Under Orange, from their first mission to their previous last mission, kind of how they got from where they were to where they are now. Just so you guys can kind of keep up. But other than that, that's everything. Thanks for watching, guys. Like, comment, subscribe. Please, like I said, comment. That's my biggest thing. Share us with your friends, and grab some dice, and let's get rolling.